If you are an employer, whether you are self-employed employer or a company employing individuals, whether that's a private or not-for-profit, it's likely you would have accessed the furlough scheme that began back in March 2020 and closed its doors for the claims up to September 21. The last claim would have been made by the 14th of October 2021. However, that's not the end of the furlough scheme. There is still work to be done as a business to wrap it up, to make sure your business is protected from any potential investigations and claims by HMRC. In this video, I'm going to outline what those housekeeping exercises are, tell you what you need to do if you've actually overclaimed under the furlough scheme, which is quite likely, and what you need to do to make those entries into either your self-employed form or your corporation tax form. Hi folks, my name is Mahmood and my I Hate Numbers YouTube channel is there to increase your financial awareness, up your money mindset, make you more money, save tax and time. What a fantastic combination that is. Now, effectively, what you need to have done in terms of reviewing your housekeeping is what you should have done at the very beginning, i.e. make sure you have records on file for the conversations you've had with your staff where they've agreed to a change in their employment contracts. Make sure you've got a record that you need to keep for at least 5 years, by the way, of the hours that your employees have actually worked and the hours they should have worked for the part-time flexible furlough scheme. Make sure you've got a record and you're happy with the methodology that you've adopted to calculate the level of the furlough grant. Remembering there's been many changes in the furlough grant over the periods. Sometimes it's been a full 80%, then it's dropped to 70 and then 60. Make sure those calculations are correct. Make sure that your contracts are restored back to what they were pre-COVID for those staff as well. Now, that housekeeping aside, if going through that mini internal audit, you discover you've overclaimed, then you have the opportunity to inform HMRC and do that to avoid any penalties and excess interest being charged. Now, the other thing that you need to be aware of is what's the entries that you need to make on disclosure terms on your tax returns. Now, if you're self-employed, you have to make a requisite entry on your self-employed pages. I'm going to show you in a few moments visually what that looks like. And if you're a company, it's slightly more involved. And I'm going to talk you through an illustration using HMRC's own figures of the entries that you need to make on your tax return if you're to mitigate and avoid any excess investigation by HMRC. Okay folks, come with me, let's check this out. If you are self-employed or a sole trader and you've employed staff and you've also claimed the furlough grant, then you have to make entries onto your self-employed pages for your tax return. Now, if you are using these short pages, so that's 2 pages there, so that's typically annualised income or turnover below £85,000, then the amount of furlough grant that you've claimed should go into box number 10. If you are self-employed and an employer and you've claimed the furlough grant and you use the 4 pages, then that same figure for furlough grant goes into box 16. Do not, under any circumstances, enter any of the self-employed grant you may have also received. In both circumstances, when you've completed your personal tax return, you must sign off box 20.1 to say that the tax return includes entries for coronavirus support. And what I want to do now is to look at the situation where if you're a company, a corporate being, and that could be a not-for-profit, a private business, a charity that's also an employer, if you claimed furlough grant as a corporate entity, the entries are slightly more involved. In this next illustration, I'm going to be showing you the entries that you need to make as a corporate entity in respect of furlough. This is slightly more involved than the self-employed pages, and there's more information that you need to disclose if you've actually overclaimed in respect of your furlough grant. Now, when you prepare your accounts, you're preparing the accounts under what they call a normal accruals basis. So effectively, if the level of grant you're entitled to for that period of time is say 135, and that's the figures that HMRC have got in their disclosure notes, that's not the number that goes into box 471. What you enter here is the amount of cash that came into your company bank account. In this example, it's 120,000. Now, if you have made mistakes during your accounting period, and in this example 2020, and you've actually adjusted your next claim, then you do not need to enter that into the corporation tax return. This corporation tax return is focusing on errors that you've discovered over claims that you subsequently disclose after the end of your financial year. Now, box 472, the 102,000, is effectively money that you've received during the course of your accounting period, less any overpayments, any overclaims that you've identified. Now, box 473, this is a situation where after the end of the financial year, the business discovers they've overclaimed, they've made a declaration to HMRC accordingly, and the key thing is, even if you make a declaration and disclose it to HMRC, you must disclose it. So that 10,000 is following an audit, an error they've discovered, they've overclaimed, and they've informed HMRC accordingly. That goes into box 473. Notice, by the way, no other entries are made. Box 474, by the way, is effectively things like eat out payments, overpayments that have been made also. We're assuming in this example there aren't any, and we're going to be focusing on the Furlough Grant. Box 475, by the way, is just the corporation tax liability based on the taxable profits of this fictional business. Now, if we look at box 526, we see the figure of 8,000, and that's a figure that's been an overclaim but has not yet been declared to HMRC. Effectively, that's the figure that you'll be paying back, and you'll be paying it back through the corporation tax return. So in box 528, HMRC expects from you to be made payment effectively 9 months after the end of the year. So by the end of September 2021, they will expect you to have remitted 11,290.61. That's 8,000, which is the overclaim that's been discovered but not yet declared. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you should complete your corporation tax return. Now, there has been some commentary elsewhere where people saying if there's been no overclaims, you shouldn't enter anything into those boxes. My advice would be, these are the guidance notes as published by HMRC. I would suggest that you follow them. Even if no mistakes have been made, make sure you enter into box 471 and 472. If you do not, you run the greater risk of being investigated, even if nothing untoward is going on. Okay folks, I hope you found that useful. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. If you've got any feedback or comments to share, I'd love to hear what they are. Apart from that, good luck, audit your furlough claims, rest easy, make sure your records are there, and I'll see you on the other side next week.